Title and thumbnail should give it away. Let me give you guys a clear, blunt answer to why you shouldn't make a Guardian Soul. Point number one, if you're not mentally prepared. If you do not like the augmented affix system, you do not want to deal with something that is stupidly low, that is at a 10%, if you do not want to go through a lot of manipulation and do a bunch of augmented affixes, formulating and all that, do not go for a Guardian Soul. Last point, second point, it is if you're not physically prepared. If you did not get a lot of special ability transfer passes, if you have not saved on them, if you did not save on your mission badges, if you did not save or buy a good chunk of recycle badges when they were cheap, if you did not farm or try to get low fodder pieces, then you are not ready to make a Guardian Soul. Now, if you still want to try to make it, there is a section in that video for you. But if you're not mentally prepared and if you're not physically prepared, do not go for a Guardian Soul. There are alternatives. So if I pull up one of my old formulas that I made, this is the 421. Now, this is technically 425, and you might be saying, wait a second, Morph, that says 355. Well, add timed abilities. Technically, you cannot do that with the simulators, but if you add a timed ability, especially the max one, you can add a 70 to this. So if you want to have a lot of attack and a good chunk of PP HP, guess what? This might interest you instead of something like a Guardian Soul. Guardian Soul with all these other abilities can be used as an all-rounder, but guess what? You don't need Guardian Soul to try to push and make certain formulas abilities that can emphasize on certain stats. So like this one, emphasize on that T attack. It makes you a glass cannon. Now, obviously, this particular piece is at, well, it has an SSA of an S7. That is an ARM 13-star unit. You can only get the grade 2 on an arm piece compared to the rear and leg, but you could try to still make a formula that is close to this and try to get a good high attack power. But the thing is, you don't see a Guardian Soul in this. You see Apprentice Soul, Mana Rev, Ether Factor, Mark Angra, Grand Technique, Technique 6, and a Varuna Glare, and then the SSA. All of these you could try to farm for and get, and it's a bit cheaper to actually work with compared to a Guardian Soul that has all these other all-rounders. And if you want to do special ability transfer to try to get something that's at a 5 slot all the way up to an 8 slot, you can do this with this formula. There are alternative ones as well that can emphasize on something, but do you have to have a Guardian Soul? No, that is optional. Could you actually increase this stat even further with a Guardian Soul? Yes, because that thing is stupidly fucking broken. But once again, if you're not mentally or physically prepared for this, do not go for it. That is it for you guys. So thank you guys for watching. If you want to watch the rest of this video just so you can hear these other things that play a factor into you making it and me just bringing up some of the things I already mentioned, then stick around, I guess. So let's say, despite all this, you still want to make it. Now, the reason why I do a lot of my Affix augment sessions is so you guys understand how I go through the process and how I try to make it as cheap as possible. If you notice when I make a bunch of the Guardian Soul stuff, and if it's your first time watching this, you might want to look in the description and watch a good chunk of those videos to understand this video dealio. If you watch those Guardian Soul unit makings that I've done, you notice I decreased the price from the initial 300 mil that I put down on my first Guardian Soul to 150 on my second one, and then roughly around maybe below 50 mil on my last unit piece. Actually, it might be below 30 mil as well. The thing is, I decreased that cost because I farmed and decided to do certain approaches that made me save a lot of these resources. I still have an abundance of ability transfer passes, mission badge currency. Actually, the thing about Japanese PSO2 is that they don't have a lot of the seasons, so we don't have as many mission badges, especially with the delay that's kicking in because of NGS. But I also have a good chunk of AC items I can turn in to get recycle badges, or at least try to get 4 slot attacks. So if you want to understand how to make a Guardian Soul, I advise you guys to watch those videos as well. And if you are planning to watch the rest of this video and you hear a certain terminology, there's various videos that stress the things that I'm going to mention. For example, ability transfer, process, SAFs, the badge shop, the currencies, the add support items, protections, recycle badges. Well, I didn't make a specific video talking about recycle badges, but I did drop hints in other videos that did bring up recycle badges. So here's the thing, if you are on that borderline of I want to try to make Guardian Cell despite, you know, me not playing at the very beginning, or, you know, despite all these other things, then you gotta farm. If you want to make it as cheap as possible, you gotta farm. You gotta farm the stuff that makes up the Guardian Soul. Once again, there's a video that already breaks it down for you. So you need stuff that can give you an Astro Soul, Ether Factor, Mana Rev, Absolute Glare. Then you would also need to farm up, or at least use a good chunk of your Meseta and put it towards getting Recycle Badges, because that 4-slot Protect will help you, 1, save all the fodder pieces that you are going to use to try to make a Guardian Soul. And 2, this is you not destroying everything while you try to make a Guardian Soul. So make sure you stock up on that, you start farming, you start getting a bunch of Meseta, play with the market, do a good chunk of investments, farm. That's how you decrease the cost. Now, if you're willing to pay an X amount of Meseta so you can get someone else to do it, or, you know, buy the stuff that you need off of the market, then you can try to make it yourself. That is entirely up to you. Just note that you're gonna need a lot of Meseta to do this. However, once again, with NGS around the corner, it is advised to try to minimize that cost, because of the fact that, you know, the stats may not be at its fullest. Now, NGS is still in its beta phase, so they could change some things, but currently, from what has been revealed here and there, when you go to NGS with like these augments and affixes, they're not at its highest. Once again, it's in its beta phase, so there's a possibility that that might change upon its release. But just pretend that it's the worst case scenario where it's not going to give you as much like it does in PSO2. So you gotta farm, you gotta stock up, you gotta work, you gotta grind. If you're not mentally, physically prepared for that, then I advise you once again to not go for a Guardian Cell. And I guess this last point is to those who are prepped physically and mentally for it. And I will say this, I did advise some people on what to do, because some people saw what it took to make a Guardian Soul. They saw my video about Guardian Soul the first time I made it, and they were like, hey Morph, how do I prep myself for it? I gave them points right away. The big thing is to stock up on those recycle badges. Now, the recycle badges over there in global may not be as big, but it still stacks depending on whatever the price is. However, if it's at the lowest price, even though it can stack against you, it's not as bad. For example, when people were talking to me, a good chunk of them pointed out the recycle badges were at 200,000 Meseta. Now, if you do your math, do 200,000 times 10. Why is 10 a thing? Why do you need to multiply it by 10? Because if you go to the recycle shop and you look at the 4-slot protects you can get here, note you cannot buy these 4-slot protects. You cannot buy the 5 slots and above as well. They might change it later in game, but currently right now, as of this recording, you have to get these protections through a bonus scratch, or through the support AC Star Gem scratch, or through here, the recycle badge. And to get this 4-slot protect, guess what? You need 10 AC items. Now, if you have badges, guess what? You can trade that in. Question is, how many badges do you have, and if do you actually play with the not the affixes? Do you play with the AC scratches and all that? If I type up recycle badges over here on the Japanese PSO2 on ship 2, you can see that these things are going for 2 mil. Now, buying one of these, it's not bad. But if you decide to times that by 10, it gets really bad. Because do 2 mil times 10. That is 20 mil right there. 20 mil is a lot. And even with like a good chunk of my characters, I have 22 characters over here on the Japanese PSO2. 22 times 2, because you get 2 million for your weekly ARCs missions, that's 44 mil. So I'm already spending half of my own paycheck from doing my weeklies to put towards this. Do you really want to do that? Now, if you decide to buy those recycle AC badges when it was 200,000, guess what? That's not as bad. Because if you had 22 characters and you were able to do your ARCs weekly missions, you get 44 mil. Guess what? Instead of paying for 20 mil with this price, you're only paying 2 mil if the price was originally at 200,000. This is why when people told me the price over there, I told them, if you really want to go for Guardian Soul, buy them. Like, use a couple of your characters' ARCs weekly missions and dump them to get those AC recycle badges. Now, the other thing is, when it comes to how you get to an 8-slot and all that, it is crucial to be on point with your class cube exchange over here, the limited one for the ability transfer passes. If you did not do this, you're at a disadvantage, especially if you were trying to do this on Global, because Global got theirs, I think, in September, whenever episode 5 was a thing, or maybe at the end of episode, or somewhere in episode 4, I don't remember. But whenever I made a video talking about this, the moment they released it over there in Global, because you want to stock up as many of these passes as you can. To get to an 8 slot, this thing, even on a weapon, 8 slot on a weapon and unit, you use the special ability transfer process, it is going to eat up 100 passes. You got 3 unit pieces, you got a weapon. And here's the thing, weapons you could easily try to push to an 8 slot with, but in terms of what ability you'll go for, especially for a Guardian Soul, I would say you might want to play it safe. But that is if you have the resources, if you have another 100 ability transfer to spare. Some people, or a good chunk of people, will say you would want to try to gamble and try to make a Guardian Soul at that 8 slot. I personally did not want to do that, so I decided to do that 8 slot method. So if you haven't been stocking up on ability transfer passes the moment it was released over there in Global, then you're kind of in a sticky situation. There are titles that can give you a good chunk of them, like hitting level 100 now, so you can get 10 of these ability transfer passes. You get a good 130, 140 if you get all the classes in PSO2 to level 100, so you can capitalize on that. Not only that, there should be a couple other titles that will pop up and give you more ability transfer on top of that. There's several other titles that will give you ability transfer passes, but you need a good chunk of them. If you have been spending them and whatnot, that's going to be a slight problem to push to an 8 slot. At the very least, though, you could try to stay at certain slots until you get all these passes, which then you can do said upgrades. So if you want to stick with a 5-star Guardian Soul with like Crack 5, Returner 5, Absolute Glare, and Ether Factor, then you can, until you get a good chunk of passes and then slowly upgrade it. Not only that, that gives you time to try to get some certain abilities as well. Another thing is the mission badges, because guess what? You will need a good chunk of these mission badges to get some of these pop items, especially Mana Rev and Ether Factor. However, because of the release of receptors over there in Global, there is a way to try to push to a 5 slot. But the only problem is, you going from a 4 slot to a 5 slot, you're going to need 5 slot protects. And not only that, if you're trying to go to a 5 slot with a Guardian Soul as well, you will want those 5 slot protects. Now, question is if you actually spent in the game, and if you have those certain 5 slot protects that you can only get through AC scratches. So if I go over here and show you the Ether Factor Mana Rev, it's going to cost a good 120 mission badges. Times that by 2, because you'll need that if you do not make the 5 slot Guardian Soul, Ether Factor, Absolute Glare, Returner 5, and Crack 5. You're going to need 2 of these, 240, times that by 3, because you're doing that for 3 unit pieces. It's going to be 720 mission badges. Do you have 720 mission badges? If you do not, you might have to do something, or you might have to wait until you get those badges. And the biggest thing of all will be just stockpiling on stuff. Now, if you play the waiting game, some of these abilities will be easier to farm for if they release a certain quests and certain drops over there on Global. A lot of our seasonal emergency quests are dropping a bunch of Soul Catalysts. So if I type it up over here, Soul Catalyst, you see these 12-star units. These 12-star units have a Soul Catalyst on them, and they are going for a lot in terms of their slot numbers. It's like 5 slot all the way up to an 8 slot. There's a couple that's at 3 slot, 4 slot. If I look at the market too, because of these quests dropping these catalysts easily, it's not as expensive anymore too. So some of these abilities are easier to go for now. But that's if you play the waiting game. So there's a lot of things to note. There's a lot of things that I can point out, like the add support items over here. I hope that you guys get this soon, because this will aid you in getting some of these endgame abilities. They might update it when you get TDP over there. If you don't know what TDP is, don't worry about it. It's the future urgent quest. But it's going to give you these add ability items, which then can help you make an easy factor catalyst or an ether cell, which then you can combine all together to make an ether factor. Or you can do the opposite end, which is getting Reverie catalyst and then having this Omega Memorial pop item, and then you can try to go for the Mana Reverie, which then you can try to combine to go for a Guardian Soul. So yeah, I already gave tips about it. I gave indirect hints and giant direct hints, especially if you watch my videos. So if you're gonna go for a Guardian Cell, once again, the big thing I want to stress out is you want to make it as cheap as possible. You want to make sure that you did the things that I recommend and pointed out. And if you still want to do it, then guess what? You're gonna have to do all these things that I mentioned. The big problem will be the recycle badges. It's not the special ability transfer one, it's not the mission badge one. You'll get them eventually. The problem is this recycle badge, because once Guardian Soul is out, the price might go up. Now the thing about Global is that you guys got a good chunk of wells, and that might decrease the value still, and it's not going to go to a stupid price like maybe 2 mil. But once again, here's the thing. It is limited, because if you don't have a good chunk of protects and you try to go for a Guardian Cell, like you would want those protects because of how good those protects are against Guardian Cell. That increases its value tremendously. So that's why recycle badges will most likely still go up, despite it not going up greatly when the limited AC recycle shop came out. And also note that with the limited AC recycle shop, they also give these certain pop items as well, and you can try to use a couple of your badges to get these. So if you have this update for the mission pass battle pass, guess what? With the recycle shop, or the limited AC recycle shop, you can also get a good chunk of these as well and try to go for an Effective Mana Rev easily through those mains. So there are ways to tackle this and not spend as much. I've shown it in my videos. It took some time for me to do it. Not only that, especially with my last unit piece, I already had some of these things because of what I've done. I did have a good chunk of protects. Hell, I still have a lot of protects. I don't know what to fucking do with them. I'm kind of mad about it because they're just sitting there and I want to get rid of them and sell them off, or maybe give it away to someone else. The problem with these protects, especially the higher ones, is that I can't do anything with it. And yes, I have like, what, 28 of these motherfuckers? I have 3 of these, surprisingly. I don't remember how I got them. Is it because of... I think this is Star Gem ones. No, wait. Is it Star Gems? Looks like Star Gems. No, it's AC because of that symbol. But regardless, the thing is, like, I got these things. I don't need these things. Like, I didn't want to work with anything at a very high slot in the beginning. I might just use them willy-nilly now because I don't know what to do with them. Unless they could decide to add a sell option to these damn things. But yeah, I've already prepped myself in some cases. Because when I was going for certain fashion items and I want to account lock the damn things, I need to try to scratch them. And I needed to use a bit of my Meseta here and there. And sometimes I just save a good chunk of my items as well if I decide to go for a scratch. Like, some of these things are just sitting in certain values now. This thing, for example, is 20 goddamn mil. This thing used to be at 1 mil. So there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of prepping yourself for it. But all in all, it's just that, do you know all these various things? It's not just you farming and stuff. You need to play the market as well, and then also understand how the market works. Now, if you're not a big fan of Guardian Soul, and let's just say you are in the boat where you were trying to make it, but then after thinking about it and just, you know, hearing this again, you might be saying, Morph, I don't want to go for it anymore. What you could then do, especially if you already stockpiled on a lot of these things, is you could personally sell the components that can help other people make a Guardian Soul. So if you have a lot of recycle badges, guess what? You can get a good chunk of Meseta out of it if you buy low and then you sell high later, especially if the price goes to 2 mil, like how the Japanese PSO2 is, or particularly on my ship. Then you can get a good chunk of Meseta out of people buying your recycle badges that you only spend 2 mil out of, or however much Meseta you have. So yes, here's the thing with Global PSO2 as well. It's on a 3x 4x speed. This is going to be a giant issue. The augmenting and fixing section and farming section, it was just going to be all over the place where people could actually exploit that. And I'll talk about said exploit in a later video. But if you really want to make a Guardian Soul, you got to be physically, mentally prepared for that. You got to do what you got to do. Farm, stock up on Meseta, get all these different items, and just get ready to make one of them. I would advise you guys not to actually make some of the pieces right now, though. If you have everything and you want to try to make some of your pieces, that is entirely up to you. But I would stress this out. Do it on a boost week. Because, one, it is good to do it on a boost week. You get a bit more of a % chance to help you try to finalize stuff. Secondly, you don't do this on a boost week. It is a pain in the butt to just, you know, spend a good chunk of your Meseta left and right. Because you might be spending a lot more resources without a boost week. And then third, it's just going to be a pain in terms of Meseta as well. Especially if there's no enhancement cost that can go alongside with a boost week. But that is it. If you have any question, comment, concerns, put it down below. I think I was all over the place in the second half of this, but I gave you guys my clear answer. Like, you know what you need to do. If you still have question, comment, concerns, if you want to have a one-on-one talk with me with how you can approach Guardian Soul, my Discord is in the description. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.